So, Simon Leon, here we are in the Royal Borough of Windsor. Tourist hotspot globally, I suppose, isn't it? People come from all over the world to come to Windsor. You live here now, Leon, but you didn't always live here, did you? So you grew up 20 minutes down the road in Bracknell. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and and your life.
Yeah. So I grew up in Bracknell. Went to school in Bracknell. Didn't grow up in a Christian home. Like a lot of people in Bracknell, grew up thinking I was going to be a professional football player. Then realised that definitely was never going to happen. Left school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like a lot of teenagers, just got involved in going out drinking and that sort of stuff, and that was pretty much my life for about 7 years. And then got to the age of 21. Thought I just got to get out of Bracknell, so went and saved up a load of money, went to live in Australia for a year, and then did that, come back, got back into the same old lifestyle that I was living that was not really good for me, and then thought I needed to get out of Bracknell again, so emigrated to New Zealand, thinking that was going to set me free from that lifestyle, but it just got worse, and then eventually come home from New Zealand, come back to Bracknell. Things not going very well, and then someone come into my life and started talking to me about Jesus and started inviting me to go to church, which I'd never done before, and he went to a church in Reading. So I went to, it took him about 6 months to convince me to go to church, but I went with him to a church in Reading on a Wednesday night. It was the first time I've ever been to church, and I gave my life to Christ that night. So become a Christian, started obviously experiencing Jesus for the first time, experiencing the Holy Spirit, falling in love with the Word of God, and just really noticing a change in me and the desires in my heart and the things that I wanted to do, and also sort of like the grace to be able to live a different way. And church leadership wasn't on my radar at all at that point at all. I remember the church I become a Christian at, a lot of the people there wanted to become pastors. I just remember being aware of that. It was like a thing to aspire to, and I was just like, that just wasn't what I was thinking about. And anyway, I went to that church for about a year, but left. It was quite heavy shepherding, let's put it that way, and I ended up just doing a runner, and it was just not really good for me. So I left that church and then didn't go to church for a while, but realised that I really did need to be around Christians to keep following Jesus. So someone recommended Kerith. Went to Kerith, got involved, started getting to know people, joined a small group, started to get involved in helping lead a small group, helping to lead Alpha, and just got more and more involved. And I still wouldn't say I felt a sense of call to church leadership, but I just found myself getting involved in church leadership, if you know what I mean. It was just a natural thing that just started to happen.
And Simon, you two had a conversation sort of in the early days, way before Windsor started. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I think there must have been a little bit of a shift in your thinking, because I remember you coming to me and saying, hey, I feel like God might be wanting to be involved in a church plant and be a part of it. Would that be true? Yeah,
I think to begin with I didn't, but then as we started doing things like remember the 10-10 preachers, and someone encouraged me to go and do that, so I did that. And I remember once when I did my first full-length preach, I just got a sense that God was saying, this is what I want you to do. And so I went to Simon thinking, okay, if God is putting this on my heart, if this is what I want, God wants me to do, I better start pressing some doors. So I went to Simon and just see what he thought about that.
Yeah, at the time I was wondering, what do I do with this? Because we weren't planting churches, we hadn't started sites at that point, and just thinking how do I help you in this step? And so I remember there was a guy called Pete Comfort who'd come and been part of Kerith for a little while, and he was going to plant a church in London, and I thought, this might be a good idea for you to actually go, and for you and Diver to go and be part of that, and just see what it was like to be in a church plant. And you guys incredibly took that risk and took that step and stepped out and moved to London, didn't you?
Yeah, it's just I felt that sense of call, but obviously didn't have a clue how I would do that. And just with Pete and Nikki, when they come back, and went out for a drink with Pete, and he just said this is what they're thinking, to go into London to start a church. And I just thought, well, if this is where God's calling us, this would be a good experience for us to just go and see what goes into building a core team and everything that goes into planting a church. So I spoke to Pete, thought we'd do that for 2 years. So we spent 2 years in London, in Ealing, helped plant a church. Really good experience, went well. Got to the end of the 2 years and we were just like, okay, just sensing, what do you want us to do, God? Do you want us to stick here? And yeah, we just felt that God was saying that our time there was done. And yeah, so we had our first son, Caleb, there. So we come back from London, come back to Bracknell, and then yeah, just started getting back involved in the life of the church.
So by this point, we were sort of exploring multi-site. And here we are obviously now with Windsor, but at that point, what was the conversation around Windsor and Maidenhead and this site being a reality?
Yeah, well, we'd start the site in Sandhurst, which is also now Kerith Farnborough, and that seemed to have gone well. So we were just starting to think, could that be another tactic for the next step, you know, as Bracknell filled again, to actually plan a group of people somewhere else, and it seemed like Windsor was an obvious opportunity. So
amazing.
Yeah, that was what happened next.
So here we are now with a Windsor site, but we don't actually meet here in the centre of Windsor, we meet in Debworth, right? So let's jump in the car, shall we head over to the venue?
Excellent.
Okay. So tell us about the early days of the site here, and how did it start, and what did those early days look like?
Yeah, well, I think it started really with small groups, didn't it? So we had Andy and Vicky Swift who were over in Maidenhead and started gathering a few folks, and I think you and Diver would travel over here midweek.
Yeah, so we used to come over and see Andy and Vicky's life group, get to know those people in that part of that group, got to see if they was interested in being part of the core team, and things started to develop that way, really.
Yeah, so we contacted some of the local churches in the area. And River Church in Maidenhead had the Gospel Hall that they'd sort of had in the past but didn't need anymore. So I think that sort of settled us here, really, didn't it? As like this seemed to be like the sort of area that God was calling us to. And then All Saints Church were just brilliant, weren't they? And Louise there was just amazing.
Yeah, so Louise kind of offered us to use her building one Sunday a month. So we started meeting as a core team, started having meetings on a Sunday afternoon once a month, and things just started picking up some momentum from there.
That's amazing, really, isn't it? That different, churches helping us out to get this thing going, and actually it was another organisation that we worked with to find the building that we're now meeting in on a Sunday. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we had the Gospel Hall. We was meeting in All Saints one Sunday a month, but the big challenge for us was to find our own building. So we was looking all over, contacting the schools in the local area. And finally, after some searching around, we got the building across the road from the Gospel Hall. So during the course of the pandemic, the building became available for us to take on the main lease. So we took on the main lease, and so we have the building that we was using for Sunday mornings, like all throughout the week now.
That's so great. It's so loud with all these planes flying over. It's getting a bit cold, it's getting a bit dark. Should we go and sit inside the venue? Let's go for it. So it feels much warmer in here, a lot more quiet, less planes going over now. So how long have Windsor been meeting in this room, in this building for?
Yeah, so we took over the main lease during the pandemic, but actually meeting here on a Sunday. We've been meeting here for 4 years in September.
Wow.
Yeah, so obviously during the pandemic we didn't meet for about 1.5 years, but come back meeting probably 1.5 years ago now, and been meeting here every Sunday morning during that time, and also, like I say, we've had the main lease, so there's other things that have been able to get started as well. Yeah,
that's amazing. And so during all this time, you've been, up till about now really, you've been working part-time in another job and part-time for the church as well, right? Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what your other job was, and just hear a bit about that.
Yeah, so I've had a few different jobs over the years. I was in the fitness industry for a while, then I went into the construction industry as an electrician. Did that for about 10 years, and then the last, about 6-7 years, I was a technician for Great Western, so fixing trains. So I was doing that full time, and then as I started to get involved with the things here and get involved with the site, I was able to reduce my hours. So I was able to go from a full-time job to just doing sort of like half part-time. So for the last I think for about 4 years. I've done sort of like Monday and Fridays for Great Western, and then 3 days a week for Kerith, leading the site.
And how's that been? Actually, Simon, you had a sort of similar dynamic, isn't you, in the past of being an engineer as well as pastoring the church. What's that like? You know, having to kind of carry both of those. What does it feel like?
Well, both of the jobs are very different. So there's different challenges in both. So in the other job, you know, it's more physical, harder work. I'd say longer days. So so those sort of challenges. But that was a job that, as soon as you left there, I wouldn't be thinking about it for a moment after I finished. Whereas, you know, work as a pastor is different. It might not be tough in certain respects, but it's tough in, like, you're dealing with people's lives. So it is like two different jobs really. The thing for me that I've found is over the last few years is just trying to discern, you know, did God want me to go full time? And I guess that's something we all wrestle with, that when we're in certain jobs and you've got a passion or a desire, or you're asking the question, is this where you want me to be, God? Are you calling me to be somewhere else? And that's something I've kind of wrestled with for a number of years. And one of the, I guess, telltale signs to me was, although I was at other jobs, I was always thinking about doing this. This is where I always sensed God was calling me. So I might have been physically present there, but really I was always thinking about coming to do this. And I guess a lot of people might live with that. You know, they're in a job, but they're actually thinking about something else that God's put on their heart. And you know, so it might be that the job they're in at the moment might just be supplying enough money to get the other things started, whether it's a business, whether it's whatever else it might be. So there is that kind of transition period where you're kind of pushing doors and getting yourself out there and trying to step out and do other things. And then for me, there come a point where the church grew to a degree and we started to get involved in so many different things. It was just not really sustainable to keep doing both jobs, and then we're doing WTC and obviously the family as well. So it's almost like I needed to make a decision. And I just got a strong sense that for the last few years, this is where God's been calling me. And and over the last year, things have developed. My wife had gone back to work full time. Dive had gone back to work full time, so that enabled us to be able to do it financially. And so over the last, 2 weeks ago, took the step to come full time. So left the train job and doing this full time now.
So it sounds like you're almost doing WTC with the theological study that actually you both are doing. And family and both jobs must have felt like you're being sort of stretched quite a lot.
It is, because with church work, even though you're doing it part-time, it's never really part-time. It always is something that you live with all the time. So before I got involved in ministry or become a pastor, I think I maybe have an impression that, it was Sundays, it's Sundays and write a few blogs, but I've come to know there's a lot more to it than that. And it was almost sort of like really to have enough time for the family and to be present. I just really needed to come full time.
So I started first at church 2 days a week before I was leading the church, and then when I took over leading Kerith 15 odd years ago, went 3 days a week for church and 2 days a week doing my electronics job. I think it's helpful. I think there's something helpful about testing a calling, and that you're not like, just to hand in your job and do something like full time is a huge step to make. When really you're trying to work out, actually, is this something that's for me? Does this work? Is this the right moment? So there's something really handy about that, but it is really hard. And I just take my hat off to Leon. I think what you've balanced over the last 4 years of not just, your job was in many ways harder than mine in terms of you were doing late nights and early mornings, and and you're also doing this BA on top of it all as well. I just take my hat off to you, what you've achieved. I know Rick Warren in the Purpose Driven Church, he dedicates that to bivocational pastors who work for the church and outside, because he says that's the hardest job there is, and I think that probably is true. So it's a good route in, but it's really hard. And then I think when you get to that point of devoting yourself fully to the one job, I think you really feel that just get to appreciate that.
I'm aware there might be like people who might be watching this, not necessarily even from Kerith, but or maybe in Kerith or other churches, who are maybe in this sort of season of maybe wanting to be full time. in church work or something like that. Like sort of sharing about the ability to be able to really focus your attention, your energy into sort of church stuff. Are there any kind of things that by going full-time in church that you miss out on? Any sort of challenges that come because of, you know what I mean? There must be some like the downsides to it as well that are worth highlighting.
I've only been doing it for a couple of weeks, so. But one thing I will know I'll miss is just spending a lot of time with non-church people. So I've spent time as a fitness instructor on site, working with loads of guys, in a depot working with loads of guys, and I will miss that because you're working with people that they haven't got a Christian background, but it gives you that opportunity to talk to people about Jesus that don't know Jesus, and just the banter that comes with working in those environments. So there is going to be aspects I miss, and also fixing trains is just very simple to fix, you know.
I don't know if it'd be easy for me to
well,
fix.
as in, you know, you just focus, and when it's fixed, it's fixed, and you go home and forget about it. You know, so there's a bit of solace in that type of work, you know. So there will be stuff that I will miss.
Yeah. How about you, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a financial aspect. You know, generally working for a church is not going to pay you anything like as well as you'll be paid in, you know, the secular world. So I think that is something you have to honestly, you know, just be aware of. There's a cost there. I think like Leon, I enjoyed the distraction of just going into a different place. I enjoyed, you know, having a bunch of non-Christian mates and hanging out with them and talking to them about what was happening in church, and that was a really good space for me. I think it also probably gave me some credibility as a pastor, that I was in a secular workspace and knew what that looked like and felt like. I think I still get some of that benefit, but that for me was something I miss.
I like what you were saying, Simon, and actually it seems like you've sort of lived it out as well, Leon, of that kind of testing your calling. So rather than going right, you know, one big line of, you know, hard and fast line and suddenly you're into it, testing it. Like I suppose your time with Pete Cornford was a bit like that in a sense.
Yeah, but I definitely agree with that, because if it was sort of, if I just went from, you know, working full-time to church, I don't know, it would be quite overwhelming. But like testing it, you're just like, okay, I'm just going to step out, and if it all goes wrong, I've still got my other job, you know. So there is maybe that's the way God worked in my life for those reasons. I'm not sure, but I definitely see something that's in that testing the corner, and I think that's with a lot of people. If they, you know, if there's a charity idea or a ministry or business idea, then maybe there's something they're doing on top of their job, which is hard because it's like extra work. But, you know, maybe, you know, their main job is just going to support them financially while they go and test out that idea, to start that business or whatever it is.
It's really good. I think more and more people seem to be having side hustles these days, don't they? And those kind of side projects that they love to do. And it's a great way of doing it.
I think we're in a season when employers are increasingly open to that. You know, they'd rather have 3 days a week of an employee rather than lose them completely. So I think if you're in those sorts, I mean, you did that and you were about the first person ever to do that in your workplace, weren't you? To go, actually, can I work part-time? And I think historically that would have never been an option, but actually, you know, I think lots of people now can push that door and maybe create a day or a couple of days a week to try out, you know, whether it's church stuff or whether it's a charity or whether it's a business or another idea, to actually explore those things in a way that doesn't mean, completely stepping into it.
No, it's really good. I think that would be really beneficial and helpful for people hearing that. I think what I want to do, I want to change tact a bit now and come back to talk about Windsor. So, new season for you, 2-3 weeks into being full time, but maybe this is a new season for Windsor as well. As we're out of the pandemic, we're coming out of it at least, and we're moving into this new season. I'd be great to hear your thoughts, both of you, really, on sort of your heart for Windsor, what's going on now. We'll start with that, and then maybe what might lie ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the things I've become really aware of is how much you really do need a great team in doing this. And I just feel so encouraged and blessed that we've got so many quality people in Windsor. We're just such a heart to build God's kingdom. And whether it's in social justice, leading small groups, leading worship, kids and youth, we've just got so many gifted people that God sent us. And we've got the building full lease, and there's things happening with the building. So I just feel like we're really poised to really do something significant in Dedworth and Windsor. And so I believe God's just gathering people and building a culture here that's really going to thrive. So I'm excited. Lots of great stuff happening. Lots of people on the fringes of our community. You just know God's just going to use them.
Amazing. That's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really exciting. What are you noticing about what's going on in Windsor at the minute?
I think, first of all, Leon's brilliant. You know, I think from the day that we first ever dreamt about Windsor, I just always thought you were the right person to lead it. And everything that's happened since has just reinforced that. So I think whenever you see something going really well, you know that there's a leader who's doing a good job, you know, who's leading with integrity and humility and honesty and openness. And, you know, the reality is the community here loves Leon and you know, respects him, honours him. And that's just so exciting to see that happening. I think, like Leon says, you know, the people who've joined. So, you know, I think the sky's almost the limit here in terms of what God might do. You know, I certainly see in the future us planting into other areas. You look at sort of Maidenhead and Slough, and you think those areas are desperately in need of probably an expression of church that looks something like Kerith. So I think that's in the future, and then who knows what comes beyond that. But,
amazing.
Just very excited.
Yeah, and we've got a building fund going at the moment. Tell us a little bit of plans for the building particularly. We just renovated the reception, right, which looks amazing. Tell us a little bit about that and next steps.
So if anyone's been to Windsor before, you'll know previously there was a bit of a kind of a maze way in through the entrance. It wasn't really that welcoming. So we've done a few gift funds last year, beginning of this year, and we raised enough money to be able to make such more of a big welcoming space with a bit of a foyer area, double doors. So that's all been done. So we're looking at what we can do next, and the thing that's on our heart is to maybe put in like a coffee bar, cafe area. Just so we can open up the space to the community during the week. We have like parents and toddler group here, other things that are on the horizon that we're going to get started, and just to try and make a big welcoming open space for the community to come in, have a coffee during the week, engage with whether it's social justice, whether it's parents groups, wherever it is, Alpha. They can just come, have a coffee, we can build relationships with them, get to know them, invite them to church, tell them about Jesus.
Yeah,
see what happens.
It's amazing. It's cool, isn't it? Like we're in an industrial estate in this building, but the industrial estate is like a stone throw from residential area, isn't it? And so it's very much an easy place to walk to and come to. So that's exciting.
Yeah, the location's brilliant. There's lots of different residential areas around here. Broome Farm Estate just down the road. So yeah, it's really easy to engage with the local community and the local schools. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. What would you want to ask of the people that come to Windsor and are part of Windsor, maybe people who are part of the other sites who might be watching as well? What would you ask for them in terms of how can they support and be part of what happens next?
Yeah, I think for the people on the site, I'd really encourage them to get, you know, just as they have done, just completely, fully support Leon and Diva, care for them, look after them. I think, you know, to the extent that these guys flourish, I think the site will flourish. You know, I think one of the things passionate about is that, you know, for those of us who are leading, that leading does us good. You know, if we're not flourishing in the middle of leading, then something's going wrong because we're at the core of this thing. So I think that will be a huge thing. And I think just the whole cultural piece of how we grow, for people to understand the culture that we're bringing, you know, and then what they can bring into that, rather than people coming with their own agendas or, you know, trying to pull us in some other direction.
Anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, for anyone being part of Kerith Windsor, I just encourage them to really look into things like Peach and the Coconut, the book that Simon wrote, and just to get an idea of the culture that we're trying to build, and just get a sense if this is where God's calling them to be. Because I'm not saying this is the church for everyone. There'll be people that God's not calling them to Kerith Windsor. But for me, I always encourage people, look at the Peach and the Coconut, understand the sort of culture we're going to be building, and just get a sense if God wants you to be part of that.
Yeah.
And then, for me, just the culture that Simon's created is just a culture of sort of like empowerment and releasing people. I've never felt that Simon tried to kind of rein me in or anything like that. He's always kind of encouraged me, assumed the best of me, and empowered me and released me. So that's what I want to do. I want to, the example he set to me, I want to do that to other people. And it's just us just getting to know each other, seeing what's on each other's hearts. And we're so well resourced here with the building now. So I just think, just encourage people to get a sense of this is where God wants them to be. What's God put them on their heart, whether it's starting their own thing or getting behind somebody else. And
that's amazing. Well, thanks for sharing. Any last sort of thoughts or anything you want to share about your journey or Windsor before we finish?
No, not really. No, I'm just excited. Just just like I say, just feels like we're really poised to do something significant here and make a difference. You know, not just to be meeting here on a Sunday, but to actually make a difference. So I heard a guy recently said, if you want to earn favour with people, do favours. And I feel we can just do lots of favours to the people in this community. Yeah. And that's why I feel God's called us here to be salt and light, and just to engage with people, build relationships, and to see what God does.
Yeah, I just want to encourage anyone who feels like they've got a call on their life, you know, like you guys felt, you know, whether it might be to do something in church life, or it might be around a charity or a business, or, you know, another idea that you've got, to pursue it. Yeah. You know, to believe that God is in those things. You know, it seemed, you know, when you first came to me all those years ago and said, oh, I think God's called me to lead a church, I'm like, I don't know how you get from here to there, but you've just taken like the next step that God showed you each time. And then, you know, my belief is as we just take the next step, then God will show you the next step. You know, that's the faith element. And I just encourage people to be willing to take those faith risks and step out and just see what God will do. And, you know, we sit in a sort of testament to that today, and who knows what God can do through others as we press into Him.
And I'll say, you know, in that journey that people go on, there's in my journey, I'd say there's some times where it didn't look it was going to happen. I was just like, I felt a sense of call, but I just can't see how it's going to happen. So there is a time where, and I think even in those periods, God does something in you. So I think just keep pushing the doors, and just keep asking people that are close to you, around you, and just seeing what they see in you as well. And
that's amazing. Great, thanks for your input. Really inspiring to hear your story, and exciting to hear what's going on here in Windsor, and the future as well is looking bright. So thank you. Cool.